excuse me. So it seems that the timing would seem to make it clear that it's pretty safe to say this expansion occurred because the association does not want psychiatrists speaking out about the mental state of Donald Trump.
This current administration, yes. 2 months into this administration, there was no scientific or philosophical basis for this expansion.
Now, you mentioned that you support the original Goldwater rule. So could you just explain, and that rule is essentially saying that you should not make a diagnosis of a public figure that you have not examined. Explain the difference between issuing an opinion in public about a public figure and actually making a diagnosis from afar.
Actually, a diagnosis and a professional opinion are somewhat similar in that they are full opinions of an individual based on complete information, including, I believe, an in-person interview is usually necessary for me. That is why I know that I'm a strong proponent of the rule, because for 20 years of forensic practice, when I've been asked to diagnose even minor public figures from afar, I have not done so. And I think that level of standard is reasonable for commenting on a public figure. But now they are prohibiting any comment whatsoever and counting that as a full professional opinion, which has never been the case. In fact, no other specialty requires this. And for instance, if you detected signs of Ebola or HIV, wouldn't you be required to report it at least to the authorities, if not alert the public, according to medical ethical guidelines? And here we are seeing multiple dangerous signs, and yet we cannot speak about them.
Now, your position and the position of the colleagues who feel the same way or similarly to you has been controversial. And a couple of concerns have been raised. The first, and the easier one to grapple with, is the concern that this is just political, that you and your colleagues are liberals or Democrats and you don't like what's going on with the Republican president. What's your response to that?
I think psychiatry and science can serve as an antidote to some of that. First of all, we are not all Democrats, and we're not even all liberal. And certainly among the thousands of us, there are Republicans as well. This is a medical observation based on natural phenomena and our clinical judgment based on our observation-based, clinical data-based training. And whereas a politician might not be able to separate oneself from the political leanings one has, a health professional is almost routinely required to separate oneself from one's ideological leanings or any other sort. In fact, there's no room for any of that to enter into medical judgment. Because you essentially bring medical neutrality. That means applying the same standards of medical practice regardless of political affiliation, and that's how we're able to treat members across enemy lines during wartime. It's purely based on science and research and clinical training. And we are concerned with illness versus health, life versus death, not left versus right.
Now, the other concern is a more serious concern, in my opinion, and that is that whenever psychiatrists or other mental health officials begin to become involved in politics or with government, that there's a danger that they could become ethically compromised. The extreme example is the kind of thing that went on in the Soviet Union when psychiatrists were used to declare that dissidents were mentally ill, and terrible things happened to many of the dissidents. There's nothing like that going on here, obviously, but how do we know when mental health professionals might be getting on, embarking upon a slippery slope?
Right, and there seems to be confusion even among psychiatrists, especially there's a past president of the APA who has repeatedly expressed this concern. It is exactly the concern that we speak about in the book. And it is probably best to leave it to forensic professionals who are used to doing testimonies and being medical witnesses, expert witnesses in court, in legal cases. It is what we routinely do. In other words, you speak only about medical matters and do not get involved in the legal or political decision making. In fact, it might help as a neutralizing ground for politics because politics is so much driven by what I often call pre-Socratic methods, driven by power or one's striving for influence, rather than logic or science or facts. Right. And medicine is based purely on those things. And therefore, it can help to neutralize some of that partisan struggle.
Now, we've only got about a minute left. You have succeeded in alerting you and your colleagues have succeeded in alerting the public to your concerns. What's next? What's the next step? What is it that you'd like to see happen?
Well, in terms of results, it has been a little disheartening. In fact, as you know, I've been first trying to after the conference, a number of lawmakers have gotten in touch with me, and I was hoping that if the president would not submit to an examination, perhaps Congress would act. It became clear that the Republican Congress was not going to act, even though there was good evidence of their being concerned as well. And that is why I have been speaking out more to the public, hoping that the public will put their support behind the need for an evaluation, right. The need for the president that they have elected to be competent in his position, to be able to carry out the duties that he has been duly elected for. And currently, from all the signs we see, we cannot be sure of that.
I wish we could speak more about this. It's a fascinating topic, but we have run out of time. Dr. Bandy Lee, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll be back in a moment with a final word. If you think partisan gerrymandering hasn't gotten out of control, consider this from a recent article in the New York Times. The 7th Congressional District in Pennsylvania is nicknamed Goofy Kicking Donald Duck because its highly contorted shape resembles one Disney character planting a foot in the posterior of another. This absurdly shaped district was drawn by Republicans to ensure the election of a Republican congressman named Patrick Meehan. Democrats never stood a chance. Pennsylvania is not alone. Both parties in states across the country have resorted to partisan gerrymandering, carving out legislative districts to favor one party or another. But the Republican Party in recent years has turned gerrymandering into an extreme, gruesomely effective art form. Maps in states controlled by Republican legislatures, which is a majority of states, have placed Democrats at a hopeless disadvantage. Dems might be able to get more votes than Republicans in these states, but the maps are drawn so that the GOP inevitably gets more seats and thus more representation, which turns the whole idea of democracy on its head. But this time, in Pennsylvania, the GOP apparently went too far. The state's highest court has ordered that the Goofy Kicking Donald district be thrown out because of its extreme unfairness, and that all of the state's congressional districts be redrawn. This is a welcome win for advocates of fair and truly representative government. A footnote. Congressman Patrick Meehan, the beneficiary of the Goofy district, has announced that he won't be seeking re-election. Meehan, who is married, a member of the House Ethics Committee, and a GOP leader in the fight against sexual harassment, got caught up in a sex scandal of his own. He announced that he would be leaving Congress after it was learned that he had used thousands of taxpayer dollars to settle a complaint that he had made unwanted romantic overtures to a staffer. That's all for now. See you next time.